U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton visits India and turns up the pressure to reduce oil imports from Iran. Backlash, discrimination, and visa issues continue to impact the South Asian community. Hear what one organization is doing about it. And Buddhist monks celebrate International Day of Vesak at the United Nations in New York. Hello, I'm Esther Vaida. Welcome to SAN News, bringing you news, views, and entertainment from the South Asian community in the United States. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton spent much of her visit in India earlier this month trying to convince government officials to reduce imports of Iranian oil. About 9% of India's oil imports come from Iran, but India has immense and increasing energy needs, so officials were not budging. It's an issue that will likely continue. Could U.S. sanctions be next? We will have much more in the next few weeks. Another story to come out of the visit was Clinton's first stop at Calcutta, the capital of West Bengal. This was a surprise to many analysts and essentially what some are calling a significant vote of confidence in that state and the future of foreign investment by the United States. According to the latest Census Bureau statistics, between 2000 and 2010, the South Asian community became the fastest growing ethnic group in the United States, growing at about 78% in the past decade. I spoke to Deepa Iyer, the executive director of South Asian Americans Leading Together, or SALT, to find out what are the main issues facing the South Asian community.
Deepa, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us.
Thank you for having me.
3.4 million South Asians in the United States, according to the last census numbers, one of the fastest increasing ethnic groups. Your group is solely geared towards that community. What is the goal and mission of your group?
So the organization that I represent is called South Asian Americans Leading Together, or SALT, and we are the only national nonprofit organization in the United States that's addressing issues affecting the South Asian community with policy and advocacy and research in mind. And in addition to our work on policy advocacy, we also engage in other programs such as leadership development, community mobilization, and of course building partnerships within our community as well as with other community organizations.
What are some of the biggest issues facing the South Asian community?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, Esther, the community has been growing at a really vast rate, very quickly growing in all parts of the country. But what we're seeing is as our community grows, that there are also needs and priorities and concerns that are coming up within our communities. So I can highlight a few of them. One of the most common themes and trends is around immigration issues. Our community is predominantly foreign-born. And what that means is that immigration concerns affect community members on a daily basis. So whether it is community members who are waiting years to be reunited with their loved ones that they have sponsored to come join them from abroad, or whether it is about undocumented immigrants. In fact, immigrants from India rank in the top 10 of the undocumented populations in this country, which is often news to a lot of people. But there is a large growing undocumented community as well within the South Asian community. So whether it is family reunification, whether it is issues related to people who are out of status, or whether it is issues related to employment visas for those who are here on, say, H-1B visas, there are a host of immigration issues affecting our community. So that is one issue that we've been working on quite a bit. And what we've been advocating for is comprehensive immigration reform, fixes to the system in this country so that immigrants can lead healthy lives, they can feel integrated within their communities and really live to their full potential. So that's one issue. And then another one has been around civil rights in our community. Especially since September 11th, we have observed an unprecedented increase of reports of hate crime, discrimination, and profiling among members of our community, specifically those who are Muslim or Sikh. So we've also been at the policy level looking at reform related to ending religious and racial profiling, ending programs that are targeting our communities from a national security standpoint. So that's another host of issues that we're working on. But of course, there are many others, issues affecting seniors, youth, women, so on and so forth.
Okay, let me take the first two individually and the last one first. Recently, you were involved in a report called Community Resilience, Rape, Ethnicity Journal at the 10-year anniversary of 9/11. Certainly, there was a lot of backlash against the South Asian, the Arab, the Muslim community post 9/11. 10 years later, last year, what did you find?
Sadly, we found that the reports of discrimination continue, even though it has been 10 years since 9/11. Certainly, those reports are not at the levels that they were right after 9/11 in the months and years following. But what we did see was that reports of bullying of Sikh and Muslim children, for example, in schools, continue to be on the rise. Reports of people being profiled at the airport still occurring. And what we've seen more recently are reports of targeting by, for example, law enforcement agencies such as the New York Police Department, which has been profiling communities who are Muslim, South Asian, in parts of New York City. And so what we have seen is that the hate crimes might not be at the level that they were right after 9/11, but these sorts of reports of profiling continue. And in addition to that, what we also see in our country is a climate of xenophobia and Islamophobia that is affecting the entire South Asian community, where there's this perception that if you are South Asian, if you are Muslim, or you're perceived to be Muslim, that you are the other, that you are suspect. And so individuals within our community are dealing with this sort of sentiment that is part and parcel of our country these days.
Obviously, education is the number one thing that can happen. But besides that, we talk a lot about educating and international understanding. But besides that, what can be done?
Well, as we are a policy organization, we really believe that it is important to have data and information stories about what is happening in our community, coupled with policy changes. And that, to us, is extremely important. So that's why we, as I mentioned earlier, are really looking at legislative changes, administrative changes that can happen at the national level with federal government agencies in order to create everyday change for communities on the ground. So one piece of legislation that we are advocating for right now is called the End Racial Profiling Act. It has been introduced in Congress, and if it were to be passed, it would actually go very far in curtailing profiling that law enforcement agencies engage in often when they are looking at criminal activity. And it would really give those individuals who feel that they are profiled a claim or a right to press their complaint against an agency. So we believe that policy change is part and parcel of what needs to happen in this country, along with, as you said, education, interfaith understanding, cross-cultural understanding, but the policy change part is very critical as well.
Let me go back to the first point that you brought up about work visas. And certainly we've seen an influx of South Asians come in. In the past, it has been for work reasons. Are you seeing a shift in terms of people moving, Indians who were living here in the United States, going back home, and even the same with some of the other South Asian communities as those now countries are emerging markets, they're becoming stronger? Do you see a sudden shift the other way?
Well, South Asians typically have immigrated to this country for economic reasons, education reasons, and of course to build better lives for their families, which is what draws all immigrants to this country. And we have seen recent reports that I think you might be alluding to as well, showing that there are members, specifically within the Indian community, that are returning back home, to places like Bangalore and others, where there's an infrastructure there that even caters to those who are, leaving the United States and kind of returning home. So we're seeing that. We're not tracking that in any way in terms of numbers or data, so I can't provide any more information about that. But I don't think that it's all that surprising when you think about the fact that there are countries in the world that are now competing with the United States in terms of quality of life or what they can offer in terms of education or economic opportunity. Having said that, you're still seeing a very large number of
Deepa, thank you so much. I hope to have you back again very soon. Please keep us in mind for anything that you're working on, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, and I encourage all your viewers to check out our website, www.salt.org, to learn more and to become a member.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Incidentally, Iyer spoke to President Barack Obama last week before he gave a speech to commemorate Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Iyer says that she urged the president to address civil rights, immigration, and health equality issues as they relate to the South Asian community. One of SALT's programs, called Rise Up, is geared towards giving college students a chance to learn leadership skills, connect with other activists, and learn about public policy. 15 students of South Asian heritage from around the country have been chosen to take part in this 3-day program in Washington, D.C. For more information, go to salt.org. An Indian-born professor at the University of Massachusetts in Boston donated his entire winnings from a prestigious award to an organization he founded. Kamil Bawa is the 2012 winner of the Guneria Sustainability Award, the world's first major international sustainability award from the Royal Norwegian Society of Sciences and Letters. Bawa, a distinguished professor of biology, handed over the 1 million Norwegian kroner, or approximately $170,000 to Bangalore-based Ashoka Trust for Research in Ecology and the Environment, a research institution in the areas of biodiversity, conservation, and sustainable development. Bawa is its founder and president. Bawa is recognized for his work on biodiversity in Central America and India. We will have an interview with him on the next week's show. For the millions of Buddhists around the world, Vesak is the most sacred holy day. Vesak is the celebration of Buddha's birth, enlightenment, and death. Hundreds gathered at the United Nations on May 7th in New York to celebrate International Day of Vesak. The event touted this message. In an era where conflicts and natural and man-made disasters are rampant, the Buddha's message of nonviolence, understanding, compassion, and peace are even more powerfully relevant. The UN's General Assembly in 2000 formally recognized the International Day of Vesak, the unique feature being that each year a different permanent mission to the United Nations hosts this event. This year, Vesak Day was commemorated with a series of events organized by the Permanent Mission of Sri Lanka to the United Nations with assistance from other missions. A large number of Buddhist monks from around the world, along with dignitaries and guests, attended the event. Interestingly, the decision to agree to celebrate the Vesak at the Buddha's birthday was formalized at the first conference of the World Fellowship of Buddhists held in Sri Lanka back in 1950. Although festivals at this time in the Buddhist world are centuries-old traditions. Following this special commemorative event in the General Assembly Hall, there were cultural performances and food festival with over 19 nations represented. Here are excerpts of speeches from the Sri Lankan and Indian ambassadors to the United Nations.
From the 5th century BC, Buddhism spread throughout the Indian subcontinent and via trade routes to distant lands such as Bactria, Mongolia, Tibet, China, Korea, and Japan. Buddhism was never propagated with the assistance of invading armies, and it spread throughout the Asian continent at amazing speed. In fact, invaders often gave up violence when they came into contact with Buddhism. The great Emperor Ashoka of India, who led wars of conquest across the subcontinent as he sought to subdue distant kingdoms, causing death and destruction on a large scale, became a man of non-violence and peace after he became aware of the sublime teachings of the Buddha. Today, the Ashoka Chakra adorns the Indian national flag.
The means to end suffering comes through the Eightfold Path, which is predicated on the right orientation of the mind, self-discipline, and a more compassionate worldview. The uniqueness of the Buddha's teachings stems from the fact of its continued relevance over the ages. In today's world, Buddha's teachings stand out as an ideal intellectual and philosophical guide for conducting a dialogue among civilizations, which is a much needed prerequisite for peace in our time.
Before we leave you, here are more highlights from the Vesak celebrations at the United Nations in New York. That's our show for this week. If you have any ideas for stories or any comments, email me at esther@bostonlanka.com. See you next week on SA News.
বুকের মাঝে ভালোবাসার ভরা নদী উছলায়